All right, so the real estate market is really starting to pick up as of late. It's getting more optimistic, but it's still kind of iffy out there. So today I'm going to go over some of the statistics that we're seeing, as well some anecdotal stuff. And I think the anecdotal stuff is important because people may not realize that all of the stats that you guys read about the housing market, realtors actually experience those stats happening in real time before like CREA or the GVRD amalgamates those numbers and presents them to you at the end of the month. So although these are anecdotal stories of just what I'm seeing on the ground, a lot of this stuff will turn into statistics 2 weeks from now. So firstly, we have 3,800 new listings in the GVRD. I'm actually licensed with the GVRD, although I operate in the Fraser Valley. Don't ask me why. But anyways, 3,800 sales so far 3 weeks into the year, 800 or listings, 870 sales. And if we go back and we look at new listings, this time last year, we only had 3,700 for the whole month of January. So it looks like we are pacing for 30% more listings this January. However, I do believe that's because of a lot of the inventory that we saw last year expired at the end of the year or got terminated and relisted this year to try again in the spring. Now, if we're comparing sales this time last year, we saw 1,400 sales. But if you guys can remember, January, February, March was actually really good last year in the real estate market. Like, it was a hot market. People were excited. People were really amped up. And it wasn't until about April where, if you go back and look in April, we had 7,000 new listings. Like, new listings spiked like insane in April, especially if I go show you the Fraser Valley for new listings in April. Yeah, 3,600 new listings in April. We spiked from 2,700 to 3,600 new listings just in April. So the market was really good up until about March. And then the market, for lack of a better term, kind of got really shitty after that, right? So, I would say that comparatively sales are good this year because last January was actually a really good year for sales. Now, getting into the more anecdotal stuff, my brokerage likes to be pretty active in the WhatsApp chats, and every weekend we'll be like, hey, how's everybody's open houses going? And, 3 months ago, most of them said 0, 1 group through, 3 groups through, and like the most you would see is like 7 on a crazy weekend, right? And now we're seeing 14 groups through, North Van Townhome, 5 groups through, 1 group, 3 group, 1 group, 1 group. And what you'll notice here is like the Greater Vancouver market seems to be a little bit healthier than the Fraser Valley. The Fraser Valley is still moving pretty slow, right? 20 groups through North Van, 5 groups Port Coquitlam, 14 groups Coquitlam, 9 groups White Rock, 18 in Tsawwassen, 18 in North Van, 10 in North Van, 4 groups in Delta, 17 in North Van, 16 groups, 5 groups in Brentwood. So the market is picking up. We definitely weren't seeing these numbers just a couple months ago. Now, one thing I am seeing that's super interesting, and keep in mind, I've only held a real estate license for 3.5 years, but I've never seen consistently pre-sale projects launching below resale value. You guys might have saw the video I put out last week about Merchant, the one in Langley where you can literally get a 1-bed condo for $399,000. Rail District in Abbotsford, absolutely love this project. Me and the wife were going to buy a townhome in here in 2021, and at that time they were $885,000, I think. Now they're going for like $719,000. But even the condos, like look at this 2-bed, 831 square feet, AC, parking, storage, beautiful units, high ceilings, good finishes, great developer, $510,000. Like, you can't find a deal on the MLS that I personally feel is better than this. You will find cheaper units, but they're going to be older. Or you can find a 2020. I think there's one 2021 unit listed at $499,000, but it's in a building that I would prefer to own this. This is what I would buy right now. I'd buy this over anything on the MLS. This unit is actually under contract from yours truly right now, but there are more options from like $520K, right? So, how does this happen? Developers might have been sitting on this land. Maybe they got it cheap a long time ago. I think this project is a massive multi-phase project, and the developer probably hit a good home run in his first couple launches, so he doesn't need to make as much money on the last couple launches, right? So he can offer lower prices because he's already made a bunch of money on the first couple launches. That's my guess. And now back to the resale side of things. I'm seeing listings that have been on market 60, 65 days. Go to book a showing with my buyer, accepted offer. Another listing, go to book a showing, accepted offers. If I send out 6 showing requests, 5 of those homes will have an accepted offer on them. Had another buddy of mine in Langley, Willoughby. He had a condo and a townhome. The condo had 40 groups through in the open house, and then the townhome, I think he said, had 12. Now, why is that important? Why do we care how many people are showing up to these open houses? Well, foot traffic is the very first piece of that data that you see at the end of the month, because foot traffic will lead to offers, leads to sales, leads to, you get what I'm saying? So the second you start seeing more foot traffic in open houses, usually means that there's going to be more sales coming soon. So things are starting to move a lot quicker. Like I said, listings have been sitting a while, are selling. It's very difficult to find good inventory out there at the moment, but more listings are coming. Before there were options under $700,000 for a decent townhome. Now there's pretty much nothing. Even if you go to Abbotsford, a newer townhome, I should say, something that's like built post, 2010. But even if you go to Abbotsford, I mean, you will find townhomes on the market currently listed, but even those ones do have accepted offers, aside from maybe 1 or 2 of them. When it comes to real estate overall, something I'm hearing out in the market a lot from people is like, oh, the market has to crash. It's just math. It's just math. The math is bad, and it has to crash because of the math, right? And I agree, the math is bad, but the math is ever changing. Right? So you can't just say this is going to happen because of the math, because the math is basically controlled by things you can't forecast, by government policy and all of these other things, right? So as an example, something that has made the math really bad is interest rates going to 5%, right? And that was based on data that's changing literally every week. They had foreign buyers ban, Airbnb ban, and they've consistently made the tenant laws more restrictive towards the tenant. So now a lot of people don't want to buy investment property. On the flip side of that coin, something that can improve the math and be stimulative is QE, bailouts. You're already seeing them play with the mortgage rules and lessening the mortgage rules, extending amortizations past 30 years, getting rid of the stress test, and all these other things that you have no way to forecast or control could also be an effect on that math that you're talking about. So this is why it's very difficult for me to make decisions based on math. I personally like to make decisions based on sentiment and then just do whatever the opposite of the sentiment is. So if the sentiment is really bad, I buy. The sentiment's really good, I'm going to sell. It's exactly why I just took a bunch of my crypto off the table. Even though it's probably going to keep going up, the sentiment is like everybody's talking about crypto again. I bought it back in July of 2022 when everybody hated it. Nobody wanted it. Now I'm selling it when everybody wants it, right? Could it keep going? Absolutely. That's why I left like 30% of my, position in there. But I think if you apply the same methodology of thinking to real estate, you'll probably do pretty well because everyone's making decisions based on math, but they don't know how fast that math could actually change based on things that you can't forecast. And it's why I'll always lean towards buying a home over renting, because you see a lot of people making this argument that, oh, renting is cheap, so you should just rent. And yeah, I agree that renting is cheaper right now. However, 3 years from now, the cost of renting is going to go up and you're going to be in the same scenario where the purchase price of a home may have gone up again, but you're like, well, it's cheaper to rent, so I'll just keep renting. And then you just keep doing that. And had you just bought the home initially, well, owning the home will at some point actually be cheaper than renting. It might take 3, 5, 7 years, but at some point owning the home is going to be cheaper than renting, and you're in the market now, and you're at least riding that appreciation when it happens, which I think will happen because real estate doesn't really go up anymore. What actually happens is that the Canadian dollar goes down and everything else around the Canadian dollar, including houses, goes up in comparison. And because your money's leveraged at 5x, if you were to buy a house cash, you would actually be losing purchasing power. But because you're buying it on 5x leverage, you're actually gaining 4 times the purchasing power when the Canadian dollar devalues, if that makes sense. So regardless of how bad the math is and how bad everything is, I think there's a lot of really good opportunity out there. I think the Canadian dollar is going to continue to devalue. And, the result of that will be that everything else gets more expensive. And I think housing will be a part of that. It doesn't have to be right now. It could be 3, 4 years from now. But again, we don't know what's going to happen over the next year or two. What I can tell you is that the condo market doesn't look good. If there was one segment of the market where the math looks bad, it's probably the condo market. Detached homes do look good right now. But again, that math could change in a matter of a couple of months based on what the government decides to do. And if you want to chat with me about buying or selling real estate, you can book a call with me down in the description using that link that I have there. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this, subscribe. I'm that Agent Kelly, and I'm making moves to move you. Peace.